What is up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of What Did Adam Say? Super excited about this. This is season 4, episode 22. I'm here with Matthew Soares. We're gonna definitely nerd out on some hemp and cannabis talk. I'm super excited about this. As soon as I scheduled him, I've been looking forward to this show. There's not too many people coming up in the months, surprisingly, that are like hemp focused people, hemp driven people. And Matthew is definitely that. He is from Massachusetts. I know I put it out and said it was from Connecticut. He corrected me, and he's from Massachusetts, which is even better because now we're like going to be 25 minutes apart essentially instead of a couple hours. So now we actually get to meet up soon. So he has a hemp clothing brand called Yesterday. I'm very excited to learn more about that because that's very in line with everything that I'm doing and always been something that I've been trying to source is hemp clothing. So we're gonna nerd out, like I said. Let's get into it. If you're watching this, make sure you share it with your friends, and let's freaking go.
Wait, what am I doing? Created a movement, won't ruin what you are pursuing. But I wake up every morning, never yawning, cause I wake up with the intent to make today my bitch. And I don't need it, you talking, so just shut your lips. Cause I'ma make it, yeah, I'ma make it, I'ma make it, I'ma make it. Lord have mercy, I'ma make it. I wake up with the intent to make today my bitch. And I don't need it, you talking, so just shut your lips. I'ma make it, yeah, I'ma make it, I'ma make it, I'ma make it. Lord have mercy, I'ma make it. This shit is crazy, right? This shit is crazy.
This shit is crazy, right? Dude, you blew my mind that you're in Massachusetts. I'm still just thinking about there's so many people that I've met through this community that I'm like, I feel like I can't even keep track of who's where now.
Yeah, no, I'm close by. Later in the summer, I'm going to be right down the road. I don't know if you live near Westport, but wherever you are close by to your farm, I'm going to be right around the corner.
Yeah, I live in Taunton, so like I'm not far at all. It's like 25 minutes from Dartmouth, and like I might have stores in Fall River too, so I'm always down there. So it's not far at all anymore, man. How's your day been, man?
It's good. Had a good day. Was excited for this. This is actually the first like official podcast I've ever been on, so I appreciate you having me. And yeah, I'm trying to do more stuff. Like I've been trying to make more content around just hemp, educating people and doing that type of thing. And I started kind of making a bigger emphasis on it like last year or like late 2020. Started making content on TikTok and stuff because a similar interest we have is just learning from Gary Vee, and he wouldn't stop talking about TikTok. And it's like, all right, I trying to do this. I already had started planning the idea of the hemp clothing company. So I was like, all right, I got to start trying to create a personal brand because I had never, been inclined to post a lot on social media. Like I had no interest in sharing my personal life. But when you're trying to start a business, you need to put content out there. So started putting stuff on TikTok and had a couple of videos taken down. So it kind of discouraged me from doing that, but I had some success, like just spreading information. People were like super interested. Like people had never heard of hempcrete. And so I made a little skit about hempcrete and it got a lot of views and a lot of comments, and people would be like, what the hell? Like, where has this been? So that kind of encouraged me to keep going. But then, if you have, and I wasn't making TikToks like smoking weed in the TikTok. I was just, if you put cannabis in the title or in the description of the video, like they'll take it down. And if you say certain things, they'll take it down. So I did that for like half of the year going into 2021 and then stopped for a while. And then the past couple months started to pick up again. And I've kind of gotten a little better at navigating what's allowed and what's not. But I mean, they're still super strict. Like cannabis related to anything on TikTok is difficult. So I've been trying to do stuff on YouTube, Instagram, and it's weird to be trying to talk about something that's like, I'm not even talking about weed most of the time. I'm talking about industrial hemp and like industrial applications of a plant, and getting censored for that is kind of crazy. But I'm kind of getting more used to navigating that. And then conversations like this and this type of platform is is definitely a good way to do that also.
Yeah, it's really tough like that. I was on I am on TikTok still, but my first video I put up was how to identify a male cannabis plant. And it was funny. I put a piece of mail on the ground in our garden. I said, "Oh, look, a male." And then I put it on my old business partner. I said, "Oh, look, a male." And then I like had my old business partner. He's like, "Okay, in all seriousness, like this is how you identify a male." And we like zoomed in and explained everything, and it was a great video, like very good. I actually have to repost that on Instagram, but TikTok took it down and I appealed it and they wouldn't budge. They wouldn't budge at all. They just left it deleted. And then the other day I posted a fun facts about hemp and they tried to, get that taken down too. And I appealed it and I won the appeal.
Hmm.
But I didn't even know that I didn't even know that it was, like, up for appeal. I didn't know it got taken down. There was no, like, notice. I didn't get a notification or anything. It just, like, I looked on my page, and all of a sudden, I'm like, "Wait a second." I went
Yeah,
into community guidelines, and then I clicked on it. I'm like, "What the hell?" I appealed it, and then they actually overturned it, and I was shocked,
that's
dude.
interesting. I haven't had any overturned. I usually try to appeal them. One I appealed a couple weeks ago, literally like 10 seconds later, it was like, we reviewed your appeal and it's been like maintained. Like we're not going to reverse it. It's like, so there's just an algorithm that's looking at something and deciding whether or not it's okay. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like this is potentially the best platform, just like podcasts on Twitch or YouTube or whatever, and just having a conversation is potentially the best platform for it. Seems to be good too, like Twitter Spaces and Clubhouse. I don't know how often you're on those platforms, but seems like just conversations. Yeah, the NFT thing. I don't
Wait,
know. I haven't seen anything about that, but it's China. I mean, apparently China's going to allow NFTs, but not crypto, which is like, those are one and the same. So I don't know how they're going to do that.
something doesn't add up here, Matt.
Yeah, I don't know.
Wait, so NFTs are I haven't had any issues so far with NFTs, and yeah, I'll have to ask, what's her name? I think is it Tiffany? Something like that. She puts up educational videos. She actually put up like a, um, like, I guess, like, kinda like an ad for our NFT project, just saying, like, "This I talk about projects that have good utilities. This project has great utilities," like, 'cause she was just she has a lot of followers and stuff, like, I was watching her videos and I'm like, "Okay, she's putting what we're all talking about in this community." I don't think she's part of the VeeFriends community, but she's putting everything that I'm hearing a lot in this community in simple videos for everybody to listen to,
Mm-hmm.
and, like, okay. And then all of a sudden she, like, liked something that I posted on my story about my NFT project, and I'm like, "Oh, have you checked it out?" She's like, "Yeah, I definitely have." I'm like, "Hmm, okay." And then I put up something else, and then she commented, like, I put up something about the utilities in my project, and she commented talking about how they're great, and then I was like, "Do you do advertisements?" She's like, "I never have, not yet, but I like your project a lot, I would." She's like, $50. Like, it was literally just like, "Are you serious? Like, are you actually serious about this? Just $50." And she
Mm-hmm.
posted about it and stuff, so it's slowly but surely getting out there more, which is really exciting, and then you just became a token holder today, which is
Yeah.
really awesome. Welcome to the fam.
So, I'm curious to learn a little bit more about it too. And like, I read the roadmap and have heard you talk about it a little bit. But so is that essentially like to fund your planting? Is that kind of the purpose of that?
Yeah, so in essentially, this is like the theory phase, and it's to, like, fund the theory phase, and through the theory phase is how we could potentially win money through the Elon thing or, so we have some other things in the works kinda in the background, that if they went through, like, we'd have enough funding to really make some big moves. But I'm also in this position in my life personally where I'm looking to buy land, personally, not regardless of hemp.
Mm-hmm.
just so happens that I really want to get a large piece of land for version 2 of the project. So, uh, it's essentially the funding to prove it that it can be done so that I can just be like, "Okay, we're really gonna buy fucking 100 acres. We're just gonna go for it."
Where would that be? Like, where is land cheap?
It's honestly because I have my son that lives here, like, from a prior relationship, I have to stay around here, so it's gonna be in Massachusetts or Rhode Island, so, I'm searching around. I've been looking at a few plots of land. Rhode Island seems to have semi-affordable plots of land, and, obviously version 2 would go into helping fund, paying the land and whatnot. It's a massive expense, but it would also be, like, access to that land, but I really wanna tie it into VFriends somehow. I wanna be like, if you have a VFriends and a Terra Apothecary token, you get access to this special area.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, if you have Terra Apothecary, you get this area, like, it's uh, I don't know, like, I'm thinking of some wild ideas. I have some friends that, have some unique o occupations and own some unique businesses. I'll tell you a little bit afterwards. I'm not ready to say it publicly yet, but, um, it's crazy. It's fucking crazy if it all works out. Uh,
Nice. Yeah, I'm
it's a
looking.
huge
I'm happy to be a part of the community now, and kind of just stay in touch and see what's going on with that. Like, would you be planting hemp for CBD and cannabinoids, or would you be going like industrial hemp, densely packed for fiber grain?
So all the above. So even if you grow hemp for, industrial fibers, you're still going to get buds because it's not just the male plant with like seeds that's growing.
Mhm.
It's a dioecious plant no matter what. So it's gonna be male and female. So the females get buds and the males get seeds. So up top of the canopy of stuff, there'll be usable CBD for stuff.
Mhm.
It's not gonna be a focus. I mean, the main focus for us is, 1, the carbon capturing effects of hemp. It's what's called a carbon sink, so it has really, really deep, deep, deep roots that reach down to the water table, so it pulls carbon, deeper and faster and just different rates, like, the amount that of 1 they say that 1 acre of hemp in a year is like what a full-grown forest sequesters for carbon. It's, like,
Yeah.
equal. It's
It's
insane.
it's wild how in now like all this environmental social governance stuff is becoming so popular with these massive like Fortune 500 companies trying to throw a bunch of money at some aspect of being more responsible, and they don't necessarily want to change any of their operations in anything that they do, but they can throw money that's tax deductible at some initiative that they get carbon credits for, and the bottom line of their carbon emissions go down as a company because they're throwing money at this thing. And I don't think anything, and I mean, I'm not super educated on this outside of hemp. I don't think there's anything more beneficial or like a more beneficial way to sequester carbon than growing hemp.
Mhm.
Like, you don't need to build. And so this thing with Elon, like in that whole contest, it's going to be interesting to see what comes out of that, because like very smart people are probably building like very sophisticated technology and infrastructure to do that. And then on the other side, it's like, oh, let's just plant 1,000 acres of hemp. And like we have this farmer who knows how to do it and he has the equipment. We go somewhere in like Nebraska, and then like it's not just sequestering the carbon. We'll build houses with the herd of the plant. We'll make non-woven composite fucking car parts with the fiber. Like, there's just so many different things that you can make outside of just actually sequestering the carbon.
Yeah,
And it's
and
weird that it's not being talked about more on like a federal level,
mhm.
because I mean, once subsidies from the government start coming for farmers to grow hemp like they are now to grow corn and all this other crazy stuff, I mean, that's, I think, when it's really going to change, and
Yep.
when a big impact is going to be had. Like, the government needs to step in, and it's weird that they're all these infrastructure bills, all this trillions of dollars getting thrown at carbon sequestering, and hemp isn't really being talked about on like the national scale yet. It's weird.
Yeah, they're talking about all these different kinds of plants, like all these ways that are making money. That's why, it's like here's the thing though. It's more than just growing the hemp. Like it's about growing the soil. I think more than even growing the hemp. That's what I've
Yeah.
come to realize is like my specialty isn't growing hemp or growing plants or having a green thumb. If anything, I have a brown thumb. I'm good at growing soil. Like I literally I didn't know this, but the land that I leased was literally forest land, like 6 months or something like that, or 8 months before I got onto it. And
Okay.
he cleared it and then he leased it out. He didn't tell me that in the beginning. I think he kind of knew I was gonna not have a successful crop, so he didn't really tell me a lot. He figured I'd probably fail and then never come back. And here I was after getting punched in the gut the next year, like, let's fucking go.
Mm.
And then he told me, so I got a soil test and found out the pH was really acidic. It was like 5. It's supposed to be like 6.6, like in that realm. And when it's too acidic, it kills off the carbon life forms, I'm basically doing nothing because the carbon that I'm sequestering is all being released. It's no bueno. So now I've fixed the soil. Like I didn't have a successful crop last year either because by the time I released this project and got the funding, it was like August 24th by the time I planted.
I saw that. I was like, wow, he's planting really late. I was like, I hope he has some autoflowers.
I did, but even they
Yeah.
didn't pop up.
Oh wow.
So here's the thing. Every farmer I've talked to, I'm like, what happens if you plant too late? And they're like, the seeds go dormant. Like, okay, so does that mean I'm just gonna possibly come out to a field full of hemp next year? They're like, yeah, like maybe not 100%, but even if 60%, 70% of them pop up, there you go. 60 to 70% of your work's already done for you. Mother Nature did it. And they'd be winterized to our climate. So now the seeds that come off of that become valuable genetics. Eventually, as you start making your own genetics, that's where the big money is too. Trademarking genetics and having the best East Coast, the best Middle East Coast, the best, Gulf Coast, like all the different cultivars that are the best for carbon sequestering for that region, like because you still want healthy plants. You don't want a bunch of bud rot and all this stuff all over it. You want plants that can withstand the climate that they're growing in. And plants are very smart, and you can literally train them through years of genetics and everything to learn the environment that they're in. And I guess one of the cheat codes to that is to plant late so that they stay in the ground and winterize, and the ones that come up will be strong as fucking hardy because they survived a whole winter.
Yeah. So did none of them pop? Like no seeds came.
I threw 25 to 30,000 seeds out there in that 1 acre, and like probably 200 plants popped up.
Oh, so you weren't growing this for like individual, like traditionally how if you're gonna grow for cannabinoids, you were densely packing it to get some like just skinny like corn, I guess. Interesting.
Yep. Kind of like corn. Yeah, that's how you want to grow especially for carbon sequestering. You want canopy.
Yeah, I thought you were growing that for CBD.
No, that's how I started. I really started going for the CBD gold rush basically. And I made money in it, and I've helped a lot of people in it, and I still continue to do it, but I'm not interested in the gold rush portion of it. I just want to help people at this point. So that's why like that's included as one of my utilities is like deep discounts on my product, because it just, I don't know, it felt right. Like I was like, I control everything in this business, the whole bottom line of it. I can reward them by eating half of it, like I don't care. It's about helping people, and it has like a few people have been like, whoa, dude. Because it's like simple. If you grow well, you grow organically, you grow regenerative farming, like you keep healthy soil at all points, it's gonna come out quality. and especially when you're training it like we were literally tying it down every week. We were like adjusting how it's tied down until it turned into this big bush, like a rhododendron type of bush. Like it was gigantic. And like we're talking, we had 3, 5, 6 pounds on some of these plants, dude. It was
Damn.
insanity. And the next year we were gonna grow for CBD again, but we went onto this land. So how we got to Westport is we had this land in a different town, and we were gonna get given these 2.5 acres. They said they'd give it to us for the season, and we're like, "Are you sure you don't want us to pay?" You're like, "No, no, we don't need the money for that. Like, we'll just use the land." So we went there in the winter. In the winter time, Matt, this land looked beautiful. In the winter. Like, when land looks good in the winter, oh my god, man. Oh, yes, this is perfect. We go back there in the spring, and it's like it's like somebody threw concrete all over the ground. The land was just crusted together and all messed up, and we're looking at each other like, "This isn't right." And come to find out, the dude literally stripped the topsoil from the field before we fucking grew on it
Wow.
and sold it.
Holy shit.
And
That's
I'm
why he
like
didn't want any money. What the
I'm
fuck?
thinking, dude, like, I would have paid you the equivalent of whatever the fuck you got for that, you know what I mean? Like, you probably got a few $1,000s or whatever for it, like, I probably would have just paid you that amount to keep that, 'cause it looked luscious, it looked beautiful. It would have saved me so much work, and we couldn't even get a harrow through the fucking dirt.
Wow.
Yeah, it was rough, dude, like, and now he that person got in trouble with the town because where his property is, it's by a river, and he's not allowed to do that, and he got caught.
Like strip the topsoil?
It affects drainage, it affects,
Yeah.
everything.
Yep.
So, especially that big of a plot, 2.5, 3 acres, and so now I'm trying to get that land and get paid for it to fix it.
Hey,
Basically,
mean
build the topsoil, like, he's gonna have to come in with a few dump trucks full of soil, and I'll build the soil into that, and after 1 season, maybe 2, that soil will be all good, and he can either let me keep carbon sequestering with hemp and maybe get some carbon credits himself, or I don't know, we'll figure it out from there, but it
that's fucked. So what did you do to raise the pH of the soil that you grew in last year? Did you just like add a bunch of lime to it or
Lime was definitely a big part of it. I put 2 applications of lime down. Yeah. No, maybe even 3. Yeah. I think I gotta look at my notes later. This is why I take notes. I literally never remember, and if I didn't take notes, I would never be able to teach anybody anything. Um, what was I talking about?
uh the way that you like
Oh.
remediate the soil?
So I use a lot of beneficial bacteria and organic compounds. Like I use this stuff called biofish. It comes in like these big 50-pound paper bags, and it smells like fucking like a clam factory or something like that. Like it's just horrible.
Yeah.
And but it's miraculous, dude, what it does. Like you spread it over soil, and then you water it with your beneficial bacterias. I prefer this product called Fish Shit.
Yeah.
It's a local product from Massachusetts, and it just so happens to be literally the best product I've tried. I've tried them all. I've tried Mammoth P. I've tried the Shark one. I've tried all like the General Organics line, the General Hydroponics. I've tried my second favorite is Advanced Nutrients organic line. If I had to choose a bottled newt, but I don't use that anymore. You know, like now it's just compost teas and fish shit and organic compounds, and then the lime as well.
Mm-hmm.
And luckily, the farm I'm on, he has cows. I do think that they've helped with that.
Yeah.
Between how much they fucking destroy the land when they're like trampling through it because nothing was established there. It's just soft soil, and they're just like fucking elbow deep
Oh,
holes. Like, Jesus. So like once I got that filled in, when I went back there right before the ground started freezing and whatnot, before it started getting cold, it was I could feel under my feet that I fixed the soil because the ground was like firm, but like not. You know what I mean? Like it
mhm.
wasn't loose anymore. There was life in it, and the tests prove that. Like, so I sent tests in to Cornell in August when I first started, and then in November when I finished and did the I dug before I did the last liming, and then did the last liming for the season. So I did 2 tests, and I'm working with this professor in Cornell, which is like, to me, is so humbling and so weird because like I didn't graduate from college, dude. I have no degrees, and I'm like talking to professors, and he's showing me his formulas. I don't fucking understand them, but all that matters is that I can show them and be like, these are the formulas. This is the fucking prestigious gentleman that is doing those formulations and tests,
Mhm.
and he can back all of this up, and it's gonna be a fucking beautiful thing. Um, and now we proved with those tests that my pH is fixed. It's at 6.66
Nice.
LOL. And so it's pretty much perfect. And with it being so perfect and lots of snow, that's really good, which is leading to more rain, more snow. And this is all good for farming because if you get a lot of rain during these seasons, the water table can build up a little bit more, and the soil can have more water retention, which is what you do when you fix the soil. So now that the pH is fixed, now you can see it. We literally, with no hemp growing, Matt, no fucking hemp growing, essentially, like a couple hundred plants scattered throughout an acre, and
Mhm.
knee high, like they sprouted up and then immediately flowered. It was like fuck.
Oh, yeah.
So it was just like a little bunch of little skinny plants coming up. It was nothing. And we still sequestered 4 tons of carbon.
So how did you quantify that?
So it's quantified. I'll show you the test actually. I haven't showed this test live at all, but I'll
So it
show.
was so you measured the soil before you did anything, and then after you remediated it, grew some hemp in it, you tested it again.
I also, to be fair, I grew a cover crop as well. So,
Okay.
that helps. But it's definitely part of it, but it's still more so what I'm doing with it.
Yeah, because I haven't looked much into like how they measure like how they quantify how much carbon has been sequestered. There's a guy in I forget his name. He runs this company called Hudson Hemp in Hudson, New York,
Mhm.
and he's doing a lot of research into this. Like really smart guy, kind of trying to lead the whole carbon credit movement in regards to hemp. But so what are we looking at here?
Alright, so let me break this down here. So, total C so, okay, so what is tested? I have in 1 acre split into 4 quadrants, okay? I only was having plants grow in quadrant A and B, so I only tested quadrant A and B. C and D, I could see were pretty much complete crop failure, so I didn't test those. And then I was honest, so because there was no crops in there, I just kind of was trying to save money a little bit, honestly. So I tested quadrant A, quadrant B, and a control zone, which was basically around the edge of the perimeter of the acre. I didn't touch. Like I kind of purposely left it alone. I marked it off and left it alone. I did lime it. That's the only thing I did to it, though. Just to kind of, I did want to fix the pH to make it a fair grounds. Because if your pH is off, you're not going to have much carbon sequestered.
Mm-hmm.
So this is total carbon percentage for each quadrant. As you can see, the control is always the lowest, which is basically makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing growing on it. This is the total nitrogen, which is important for especially early stage growth of plants. And then the organic carbon material, which is like what happens in the breakdown of organic compounds like dead leaves and like the dead fish emulsion and shit that I use. So then he has a formulation. I'll have to look in I'll have to look in the email. It's a really complicated formulation, but basically he knows exactly how much 1 acre of dirt should weigh.
I would think so, very like variety with that, but I mean, obviously, if this guy's doing this stuff for a living. He has some.
Yeah, he has a formulation for it, dude. It's fucking crazy. He's a genius, and I literally have been just thanking him for being patient with me being dumb. Like, so based on his formulations, there was 81,000. Oh, let's start at the beginning. So this bottom one was the starting test. So in the beginning, there was 73,000, 75,000, 71,000. So call it like a 73,000 average. And then you could see it goes up dramatically.
Yeah.
It goes up almost 20% on quadrant B. It goes up like 15% on quadrant A. And then he breaks it down. He went even further for me, and I love him so much for this. He put it into metric tons, which is what I wanted for the contest. So now I literally can see, okay, 34 to 39. So literally just under 5 tons of carbon sequestered difference between August and November. 3 months.
In a quarter of an acre.
In a quarter of an acre. So, yes. and then this one is, almost 4. So, and then he does the total nitrogen, organic carbon, and then he did per hectare, which is I fucking love this guy. He went above and beyond.
Yeah. So conversions for you. This is awesome. I mean, this is exactly what you need from what I was just reading about, like what you need for the contest. You just scale this up.
And this was so hard to find. And once, now that I'm talking about it, I'm basically giving guidelines for the contest. Sorry, Cash, I haven't been looking at the chat. I'm looking at these tests, man. So this is where you can see he starts scoring my soil 1 to 100. Oh shit. So my phosphorus was always good. Everything was good. Phosphorus, potassium, magnesium, iron, manganese, zinc, the aluminum levels, all those levels were really good. Okay. The only thing that was bad was, where did it go? pH.
Wow, yeah. Holy shit.
So he got a score of 3 out of 100. Within 3 months, it's perfect.
That's nuts.
It got a 0. Look at
So, like for this year, because I mean it's February. So, yeah. What are your plans for this year? Like, are you going to do this again, like, and have a better data set because it's a full acre of a densely packed?
Well, not only will I have a better data set, I already have my hemp license. The first year in 2019, when I got my hemp license, I didn't get it till almost May. The second year I got it in like June. And last year it was kind of my fault, but I got it in July. So I usually get it really late in the fucking year. This year I got it January 4th, like in the mail. Here's your actual license.
Awesome.
So that's done. I almost have the funding to pay for the leasing, and then I basically have the funding to start the whole year and be good for a little bit. I have to get a few more token holders on board, and then we'll have the funding for the leasing and we'll be all set. And I think he's going to give me a little bit more land this year, if I'm not mistaken. He quit animal farming, so he's got a lot more land left, and I know he wants to experiment with it. So it might be some like my land and then some collab land, which would be really cool. And it's really easy for me to add that on, onto my license for him.
That's awesome. So where are you getting the seed? Like, what are you like? Are you getting fiber specific genetics or grain specific? Tricop? What is it?
So I'm growing some cherry wine, and I'm growing some Willema, which is an autoflower. And
So you're growing seeds that are have been bred for cannabinoid production.
correct.
Interesting.
Yeah. I'm
Why
testing.
aren't you growing genetics that have been bred for maybe specific fiber or grain production?
Because they basically don't exist.
Huh.
When I talk to, like, I have a friend that does grain farming in Canada, large scale, and it literally is just buying random. She used to buy random genetics of seeds and just throw them all over the field, like, and it's just because when they're grown tightly packed,
Yeah,
they
they're gonna
grow.
go straight up.
Yep, they compete for canopy space, and by the time they get to the top, they're not getting these huge, massive nugs that weigh them down.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? And you don't have to wait for them to be full maturity when you're growing for that. You know what I mean? You don't have to wait till they're done flowering.
That's interesting. So what are you just like broadcast planting it, or how do you seed the acre?
I was direct seeding it, like with a push seeder, like it would plop it all in. What I'm gonna do is I was gonna lime one more time. I'm not gonna now, because I know my pH is already perfect. If anything, I might have alkalized it a little too much because did that test and then limed, remember? So I limed again after that test. So obviously, I'm getting another soil test done. I'm doing spring and fall every year, so I have a good subset of data. So it'll basically be April and November every year, and that's the way I'm gonna kind of go off of. So this year, what I'm gonna do is I know that a lot of the seeds are gonna pop up on their own. So I'm gonna treat the soil like with my benefit. Well, I'm gonna set up. I can't really. So I have to inspect in April. It's inspection period. You know, like we have to see how the weather is in April. We have to. Sometimes we get really cold Aprils, and it's not really good growing conditions. Or I could go in April. We've had a mild April, and there's a bunch of hemp babies started. You know, if I go and there's a shitload of hemp babies started, what I do is I start marking off the territory where they all are. And if let's just say perfect scenario, it's really hard to kind of predict what's going to happen because it could be 50%, it could be a fucking 100%. Let's just say it's like perfect scenario, like 85% of them pop up. I am probably gonna do nothing.
Yeah.
I might lay down some fish emulsion, like some organic compounds and some more, and spray some fish shit, like broadcast spray it because the soil will already be moist. But I'm basically gonna do nothing and make that like a okay, my soil is built now. I'm just gonna continue building on top of it. And as long as the plants are looking healthy, I have a healthy environment of other weeds because I want basically no brown showing. I want other weeds in there. I'm thinking about throwing down some legume seeds and stuff so they like spiral up the cannabis stalks and everything, and then I get beans as well as a harvest. So I'm thinking about, and that also increases the nitrogen in the soil. Not that I really need it, but you can never really get too much nitrogen. I mean, you can get nitrogen burn, but I'm not worried about that when you have that much soil. So yeah, let's say in a bad scenario, like 25% of them pop up. What I would do is still probably mark them off, but I would build my irrigation system. I have two 1,500-gallon tanks, and then I would just build PVC piping and build my whole irrigation system, and then I would plant probably in May, I would guess, like beginning to middle of May based on the weather of April. And you know, I'd chop down the weeds to like, I don't know, ankle height. I'll have to be sneaky about it. Hopefully the farmer's busy, but I really kind of want to scythe it all. I messed with the scythe a little bit last year, and it was a fucking workout, but
You're just like swinging a thing like a manual thing, chopping. Okay.
And I was doing good with it. I was doing really good. And he was like, "You're a fucking madman." He's like, "Let me just throw my mower attachment on the back of my tractor." And then he's just like, "Brrr," and we were done. It's like, whatever, man, whatever. And he just laughs at me. He's like, "You're always trying to do everything by hand, Adam. This isn't 1600 anymore." I was like, "Yeah, but I also don't want your big ass polluting tractor on my land either."
Yeah. That's what I was gonna ask. Like, if it all goes well and you get a densely packed field, like, what's the harvest method?
We're gonna have to get some kind of like combine, honestly. Like, we're not gonna get any kind of. I'm not aiming for cannabinoids this year. If we did somehow figure out a way to harvest it and get the cannabinoids, cool. But
Yeah,
I
you
don't
need
know.
like a big grain harvester or something, like, to chop off the top layer. And
Well, there's some people, and this is what we might do, that they run through the field with like a tractor attachment that just kind of has blades and goes cuts everything down, and then you leave it to field dry, and then you put it through a bucker to get like all the leaves and all the buds and everything off of it, and then you process it through like a decorticator to peel it all and get the hemp herds and whatnot. Um, and then you could process probably some of the cannabinoids and the leaves and whatnot into product and other things, or you can compost it back into the soil. That's still a great use of it. Uh, and yeah, I think that's probably the method I'll use is the blade method, and I could cite that too.
just go old school, no carbon emission hand harvest.
Yeah, I know that's not scalable, but what I'm doing with tractors, like I'm gonna have like a little John Deere tractor. You don't need much more for what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Like so it's gonna have not much emissions. It's gonna be a drop in the bucket to compared to what we're sequestering.
Yeah. Yeah. And once you can quantify all that too, are there like, where are you going to use a decorticator?
They're pretty small, actually.
Oh, so you'll get like a mobile one that someone will drop off.
No, we're looking to buy one. Like
Oh, okay.
we're trying when we sell out of the project, we're looking to either buy a small tractor. Maybe we'll get like a used tractor and then also get a decorticator of some sort. But they have different level ones, and it's definitely possible. It's probably obviously a lot more work on a small scale, but that's what I signed up for. And obviously it's like, oh, I just need a bigger machine and I can do X amount of more. And that's why it's scalable. That part's easy to prove. It's just about, this is why I kind of want to do nothing if stuff pops up, because that's essentially what you want to do to get your costs down. If your cost is like one treatment, two treatments a year of like organic compounds and whatnot, and maybe you partner up with a fish house and they drop off a bunch of dead fish shit or something. I don't know if you figure it. I don't know, but if it becomes that inexpensive and that not labor intensive, so you're not using any kind of machines or anything until it's like harvest time, that's ideal.
Yeah.
If you can just have a replenish, it's a perennial plant. That's why it gets seeds and then dies again and grows the next season. Like it always does that. It's gonna keep going over and over and over and over and keep getting more and more and more and more. It's a weed.
Yeah. Yeah. There's have you ever heard of Doug Fine?
That sounds familiar.
He's he has written some books, but he does consulting for regenerative agriculture and specifically with hemp, and he has his own hemp brand for some type of oil. I forget what it is now. I haven't tried it, but so he wrote a couple books, and so the last one that he wrote is the only one that I've read. It's the Misadventures of hemp farming or something like that. And so in it, he talks about the kind of escapades that he's been on consulting for different groups across the country. And so he worked with a group in Vermont, like native land in Washington and all these different places. And he lives in New Mexico, I think. And so one of the groups that he consults with, the soil was really depleted and they needed to do something to regenerate it. And so there was someone that like he was working with that specialized in doing that. And what they did was they went around the land and they just kind of would like dig a hole, try to find mycelium. When they did find mycelium, they took some of that and just put it in different spots in the where they were trying to grow. And then in like a couple weeks, the mycelium had spread all over in the bunch of microorganisms in the soil now, and it was like perfectly healthy. And because they were doing no-till, and it was like a very successful year they had after that. So it's interesting. Like I don't know what the method to find the mycelium and like how easy that is. I guess it maybe depends, but that's kind of an interesting method where it's like maybe you don't even need to do anything besides that. Like maybe you don't even need to do any additives. Like you just go find some mycelium, let that do its thing. It was very interesting when I learned about that.
I guess that's kind of what I'm doing is I'm building up a good a welcoming soil to get the mycelium and everything moving, because that's essentially like mycelium is in most healthy soil, like it's an essential part of it. Like that's how everything talks. It's honestly weird. Like somebody was arguing with me that plants are not smart, and I'm like, how many plants have you been around? Because I've been around thousands of plants, and I could tell you that plants, they all feel kind of different, and like when you get really in tune with plants, they start like, I don't know, you can notice uniqueness out of them even when there's a lot of them. It becomes a beautiful thing, like even especially when you're growing for cannabinoids, the terpenes that come off of each of them are so unique, and you're just like, oh man, that one smells like a cherry Tootsie Pop. Like that one smells like tobacco and apples. Like, like you start smelling these, like I'm completely nose blind to the smell of actual weed. You know what I mean? Like when I go places, I probably always smell like weed. I just don't know. I mean, I smoke dabs, so I can't really smell. It doesn't
Yeah, a
really.
lot less.
Yeah. Well, maybe it does make me smell. I don't know. I mean, I do a dab before work every day, so I mean.
Well, if no one said anything to you yet, I think you're good.
Yeah. It's
Another thing that when you were talking about genetics and stuff, I just saw something I started doing at the beginning of the year and just kind of like an effort to put more content out, making like a news update show that I post on Sundays of my comments on the most important or most interesting headlines from the prior week in the cannabis space in general, with like an emphasis on industrial hemp, but talk about some like legalization stuff as well, and just random information like how New Jersey doesn't want to allow home grow and stuff like that. So mostly industrial hemp, but
Did you see
some of
what
the
passed in California?
no, what was it?
They're talking about like if you grow more than 6 or 12 plants, whatever the limit is, it becomes a felony.
Oh, for unlicensed. Yeah,
Yeah,
for like doing it at home. Yeah, that's wild.
it's like they just can't stop making money off people in jail for weed. Like, come on. Like anybody who grows knows you need more than like 12 plants, honestly. It should be like maybe 12 flowering plants.
That's the whole thing. Yeah, because it's like you're probably going to have them at different stages. If you're really doing it for your own supply, it's like you need to have them at different stages. So
and if
is a 1-week-old plant like
they'll come in and be like, "Oh, I see," that they'll see a cutting that's not even rooted, and it'll look like a plant to them. They'll rip it out of your thing. They'll destroy all your plants, and until you're like under the limit. It's so fucked up, man. Like it's.
I mean, the California cannabis market's like on the brink of the regulated market is on the brink of collapsing just because of how it's structured. Like I don't know how they quantify this, but people have said the illicit market in California does more sales than the regulated market in California. In that, like the only people buying weed from dispensaries in California are like tourists coming into California. I had a friend that went to California. He came back and he showed me some of the packaging from the products that he got. He was in California. He was on like Venice Beach or something. He just Googled like dispensary near me, found a dispensary, went in, they checked his license, they had a menu, he bought some stuff, he left, and it was all good. He came back and showed me the packaging. And so I just got done working. I was working in the cannabis packaging space for like 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So I know all the regulations with all the stuff. He shows me the packaging. And I'm like, dude, you went into an unregulated dispensary. Like this is not California regulation packaging. Like they don't have the required symbols and verbiage and stuff on the packaging. So there's retail stores in California that are not licensed, but they're on Google and shit. Like you can just go in and so like I don't know how that's still. And this was like I don't know 2 years ago, maybe like right before the pandemic or right during the pandemic. So it's kind of crazy that that's a thing in California. So it's not just like people buying weed on the street. There's like legitimate stores and they get shut down, but then they open up somewhere else. And it's like, that's the level that how messed up the California market is right now. And then like just with how much they're taxing and all the fees to get a license and all this stuff, it's like the only people that can make it are the multi-state operators who are going in and buying all these licenses now because they can raise millions of dollars no problem to basically just like it's a race to the bottom, and they're like, oh, we can last longer, so at the end we'll still be here, we'll lose money, we'll bleed for X amount of years, but then at the end we're going to be the only ones here. So it's like all the craft operators and stuff are having a hard time, and
that's the same exact thing that's happening in Massachusetts right now.
Yeah, it's like I feel like they're like I don't know, something I just read, like they're trying to put an emphasis on or something Hoffman, the chair of the CCC. He was like, I'm looking at these financing deals that these social equity applicants are getting, and they're getting like predatory financing deals because they can't raise money anywhere else. So these people are coming in like, oh yeah, I'll give you that money that you need, but then I get this amount of equity or whatever it is, and just kind of crazy deals because there's no other way for them to raise money. And in the beginning, they're like, yeah, we're going to put an emphasis on social equity and all these things. And there's like a handful of social equity applicants, but it's dominated by really everywhere on the East Coast. It's like 6-7 companies that own like 80% of the market share in every state on the East Coast. It's nuts.
Yeah, and a lot of their parent companies are Canadian.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird.
It's like the Canadian market essentially took over. Like I always say that there's like 4 or 5 dispensaries around here that are from people like us, and that's it. You know, like the rest of them are garbage.
Yeah.
Like Caroline's Cannabis is good. There's one in Attleboro. There's one Middleborough. Yep. Or did you say Rehoboth?
Oh no, Nova Farms. That's the one in Attleboro.
Oh
like
yeah.
Those are local guys that grew up around here.
What's it called in Middleborough? P starts with a P. Panacea. It's owned by the same people that own Green Matters, which is like the grocery supply store. Amazing place. So that's another like local. And then I'm trying to think of the one in Boston. I'm gonna shoot myself in the foot for not thinking of what it's called because my friends literally own it. So
is it Oasis?
Yes, Pure Oasis. There you go.
Oasis, yeah.
You know, so yeah, like those 4. I think there's maybe like 1 or 2 more, and then a few like small craft cultivators. But it's not much, not enough small craft cultivators, and the ones that are doing it that I see are just absolutely killing it. The small craft cultivators, their shit is just leaps and bounds above what the dispensaries are growing.
That's the whole thing. It's like it's Bud Light versus like Lawson's Sip of Sunshine or like Treehouse beer. It's the same thing, and it's like that. It's gonna develop to be the same exact thing. Like the cannabis industry is gonna model the alcohol industry. There's gonna be a place for those Anheuser-Busch's and those massive companies who are doing it on a huge scale. But I don't know. I feel like New England is always has a big emphasis on craft stuff to begin with. And so I don't think it's going to be any different with weed. And at the end of the day, it's like where people spend their money. So if the people put a higher level of importance of supporting people that are local and craft products, and those companies are going to make it. If not, they're going to sell to the bigger companies. And I don't know. What's interesting is I was just reading about this week. Some I forget what position she is in the government, but this she's out of South Carolina, Nancy Mace. I think she's in Congress. She just she introduced some new bill. I forget the name of it, but it's basically to legalize cannabis federally.
Oh.
And it's a blend of some other bills that are kind of working their way through the government now, where she wants to give states the option to make their own decision. So like that's one bill already that's already been introduced, the States Act. She's like, yeah, that's good. We'll let the states decide. But she basically wants to have like a way lower tax rate, so like a 6% tax rate or something federally. She wants to deschedule cannabis. She wants to allow for interstate commerce and for the export of cannabis. So all these people, especially like businessmen and politicians and stuff, everyone is saying like, hey, yeah, let's get behind this one. Like Amazon is getting behind this bill. Like they have come out and said, we're in support of this bill. And so in big cannabis companies like Curaleaf, the CEO, the Russian like billionaire that's behind Curaleaf is like, yep, we approve of this. This is a great idea. And it's like a super, super business friendly bill where it's like, all right, this is interesting because like Charles Koch, like massive billionaire in the United States, he's getting behind this. Amazon's behind it. And it's weird, like, because it's getting so much like attention from these people that you wouldn't think would be supporting cannabis, but it's just so business friendly that it might have the best chance of actually getting passed. Who knows? Like the government is wicked slow to pass anything anyway. But if it allows interstate commerce, all that shit that's getting grown up in Maine is coming down to Massachusetts. And that's gonna, in my opinion, take over the market because it's way better stuff that they're growing. And it's all what is it?
It's already starting to happen. A lot of my friends get their bud from Maine. It's less expensive, way better.
Yeah, and they'll just drive up, right?
Yep. Yeah, and I think
so imagine
on the medical license, so like that's how they're able to do it up there. Like it's so easy. It's so easy.
Yeah, and like some of the stores up there are adult use now too. And yeah, I mean, especially if you're close to the border, like makes sense to go up there. But that interstate commerce stuff, it's going to be interesting because when that happens, like stuff like that, the real craft producers, it's like, hey, now you can sell the most fire products, no matter where it's coming from, will be available everywhere. Like the best beer in the country is available everywhere, regardless if it's brewed in Massachusetts or in California. It's like the same stuff is going to happen. So I'm excited for that day. And then also all these MSOs have spent millions and millions of dollars setting up operations in each state. So they're putting massive investment in every single state because they have to, because they need to be vertical and grow and process and do everything in each state. So they probably don't. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see how it happens because it's like that's a lot of money that they've invested in each state.
And think
they don't have that anymore.
Oregon has like a huge surplus. So like states like that, they're just losing money because they're having to sell it for so little because they have so much of it. That's what happens. Supply and demand. You have a ton of supply, you got to get rid of it, especially when it's a perishable product like cannabis. You can only keep it on shelves really for so long before, I don't know, unless it's in like an airtight container and a perfect humidity, perfect temperature at all times, no direct sunlight. Like there's cannabinoid degradation that happens naturally. You know, like cannabinoids are literally a defense mechanism against the sun. They don't really like the sun. They're just a defense mechanism against it.
Yeah. It's another article I was reading about Oregon. There's all these like international cartels growing outdoor in Oregon right now. And it's becoming like a massive problem. So this isn't new. It's been happening, but it was getting some attention in the press recently because there's like they're polluting the land, um, and they're like threatening neighbors and shit. So it's like these small like hill community, like hill towns in Oregon, like quiet towns that like all of a sudden all these international people, whether it's from Asia or South America or Europe, like are coming in, growing weed outside, and then selling it most likely outside of Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
But because there's so many states that, I mean, still don't have any legalization, like it's really good to grow weed outside in Oregon. So it's gonna like make its way everywhere else. So it's kind of crazy. There was I used to work with someone who started a cannabis business in Oregon, and he said years ago he was like driving out of some valley. There's like forest fire going on. He's driving out, and as he's driving on these back roads, he's seeing like people that are just on the side of the road, like waiting to get picked up because they had some like illegal grow in the woods, and they're like waiting for the cartel to come pick them up because they had to abandon the grow in their little like tents that they were living in. And this was years ago, so it's like nothing new in Oregon, and it's literally just because federal legalization still still prohibited. So there's like so many problems. I feel like they get fixed.
I knew that was happening in Cali. I just didn't know it was happening in Oregon too. That's nuts.
Yep. And it's like that same area. So it's like Southern Oregon, Northern California. It's like the best climate in the world to grow weed. That's why it makes sense to export it too. It's like this massive product that the United States makes the best of in the world.
Yep.
And Europe they're starting to loosen up all their regulations and stuff too. So it's like, hey, if we could sell this stuff to Europe and maybe South America.
Yeah, I'm finally able to sell my full spectrum CBD products in the UK.
Oh, so you can ship it over there?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. It's pretty nice.
Did you?
I have a question about your business. So you have a clothing business, right? How are you like stitching the fabric together? Are you partnered up with somebody that's kind of like making the shirts for you?
Yeah, I'm not doing it myself. I tried. My grandmother showed me how to use her sewing machine. I took a stab at it, but I can't make the stuff myself. So we're working we basically import the fabric from China because they make the best hemp fabric in the world. And so we're importing the fabric, and then the rest of the supply chain happens in the United States. So we're working with a cut and sew manufacturer, a dye house, and then if they're getting customized, we do that in Massachusetts. So we're looking forward to the day that we'll be able to get fabric from plants grown in the United States. Mm-hmm. But all of that infrastructure left. Like when cannabis was made illegal, all of the big decortication, all of the processing to really refine the fiber to make it textile grade, and then to knit it or to like cottonize it and turn it into yarn, and then turn that yarn into fabric. Like that whole supply chain left.
Yep.
So now they have to kind of like rebuild that whole supply chain, and making fabric out of hemp is like the most complicated. I don't want to say the most complicated because I don't know, like I'm sure there's some material science stuff that would be really complicated to make, but it's really process intensive. Like once you chop down the plants, it needs to go through a lot of steps afterwards to get to a point where it's textile grade. So I think it's going to be one of the last, not one of the last, but like one of the later stages of the market in the United States kind of getting back to where it was 100 years ago.
So me, like, we had clothing made from it. We had ship sails made from it. Like canvas, the word canvas literally comes from cannabis. So we've definitely done it at scale for the cloth. We just got to get there. And now people nowadays will be like, oh, it needs to be really soft. So like that's definitely part of it. I'm definitely trying to get rid of the Chinese hemp in America. It used to be the other way around. We used to have such a demand that the farmers would grow hemp for export, and now we're importing fucking hemp from China. Like it's crazy what the flip that happened. And I think that, like you were talking about with some of these government subsidies, I think maybe we can avoid some government subsidies and let the farmers grow what they want if we can give them some good carbon credits that are kinda like subsidies, but now they get to grow, they have 50 acres, they get to grow 20 acres of hemp, and then they get to sell that to somebody like me that's trying to make them into textiles, and, they're getting paid as much as they would have made on corn, and they're getting the carbon credits on top of it, so now they're making profits. So it's
Mhm.
that's the goal, like, is to really I'm trying to get my USDA license, not just my Massachusetts one, which, by the way, Massachusetts is a harder license to get than the USDA license. The only reason I can't get a USDA license is because I have a Massachusetts address.
Now, what does the USDA license do?
Means I could farm hemp in any state.
Oh.
That's what I
And
want.
would you need that individual state license also?
Nope, except
Oh,
Massachusetts. The
wow.
USDA license does not matter in Massachusetts at all. So I would have to maintain my Massachusetts one and my USDA one. But I'm really trying to create a network of farmers who are willing to do this with me. And if I kind of take the risk with the license, like a lot of farmers don't have the best criminal backgrounds and stuff like that. Like I know a lot of farmers with some past, and that's cool. And but I have a clean background, so it's nice and easy. It's just like, here's my property that I'm allowed to use, and then
Mhm.
farmers go on board, and I just got to figure out a way to make that sustainable to be able to survive, but still not have to charge farmers and shit for that because that's like completely opposite of what I'm trying to do. So I guess being their source of where they sell their hemp is a good way to be there for them. Like there are suppliers now for hemp and they don't have to use pesticides, so now they save money on that. They're not tilling, so they don't have to they spend less money in gas on their tractors and stuff like that. It all becomes less expensive and they make money. So I guess that does wo- work all the way around.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the most important things is too is like a lot of the times like they need a contract in hand before they're gonna plant anything. Like
Yep.
they're not just gonna because I mean there's a big chance that they get burned. If something happens, like then they're out a whole season. But like if they have a contract in place in like Victory Foods, they're like a big grain company. They do this. They basically will go to the farmer, say, "Hey, this is the seed that you should use. These are the practices that you should do. We'll buy it at this pound per or this price per pound." And then the farmer and there's some like contingencies in place. Like if there's crop failure, there's insurance, so they're still going to get paid regardless. So they feel safe, and then they go into it. They know that there's somewhere to put it. Like there's a weird chicken before the egg situation with industrial hemp now because it's like they don't really know where it's going to go. Like there's not enough processing in the United States from like big scale decortication for it to make sense for farmers to grow thousands of acres of hemp like we need to.
Hmm.
So it's like there needs to be processing, but there needs to be farmers to fuel the processing, and processing is like multi-million-dollar investments. So it's weird. It's like happening slowly, but I mean, it was only until like it was only 2018 that the government was like, okay, that's hemp and this is cannabis. Like hemp, as long as it has less than 0.3% THC, this is not a Schedule One drug. It was only 4 years ago that happened. So
I
I
do
guess
have
you
a
kind of
goal,
have to.
like if I had a farmer growing large scale industrial hemp on the East Coast, I have a source to be able to sell it for hemp lumber, hemp wood. So, because that's another emerging market, and talk about a market disruptor, like what that would do to deforestation. It would literally,
This is hemp wood. This is a hemp wood frame right here.
oh, that's fucking awesome. I love
Yeah,
that.
it's a company in Kentucky, but they source from 100 miles around their processing facility. So
Yeah,
that's part of it.
that's kind of like what I'm envisioning. Like I really was trying to jump the gun a little bit, I think, on the project, and I was like, I'm gonna buy land in Virginia, and it's because it's like a centralized East Coast. Like I can build the facility for hempcrete and hemp wool that I'm looking to build. So it's like we were gonna do that, but it's just so much, dude. We're literally looking at like $2 to $3 million that we have to raise essentially,
Yeah.
and it's just as much as maybe I'll meet somebody in the near future that cares and has money to invest into this kind of thing. But right now, or maybe some grants that could help. We're looking into those too. But right now, it's like, dude, nah. Let's try to be realistic. That's why I'm like looking at land for myself now and like enough for the project. Hopefully, like I'm trying to buy 50 to 100 acres out here, and obviously it's way more fucking expensive out here.
Mm. Yeah, and with all this like industrial processing stuff too, it's all going to be regional because it's like way too expensive to ship it. Even from like if it's grown in Virginia, they're not going to ship it up to Massachusetts to get processed. Like it needs to get processed in Virginia to be turned into like that value added product. Then it makes sense to ship it. But like just
Yes.
the material itself, like the plant material, it's all going to be regional. And it like
Well,
I don't
that's why I
know.
wanted to have the land with the facility on the land, or somewhere in the vicinity of the land, so that
Mhm.
way, like you're saying, 100-mile, 200-mile radius can come to the facility, and then as it grows, you can build them a little bit closer.
Yeah, I know there's a facility. I mean, this is even probably too far, but there's a group up in like Northeast Kingdom in Vermont where they just bought an old grain mill and they're saying they're going to build a decorticator there, or they apparently they've ordered the decorticator already and they're going to set it up in this old grain mill that like built this town in Virginia, in Northeast Kingdom in Vermont, in like St. Johnsbury, I think.
Hmm.
So like his town that has a lot of history of grain production and stuff. They're saying they are going to build a decorticator, and I'm assuming they've talked to a bunch of farmers in the area, and they're confident that they're going to have like material to keep the machine running. Um, so I didn't think that it would happen in New England just because there's not like I don't know, we've never like historically been a massive like agricultural area in terms of like big acreage like
Right.
Nebraska or like Virginia and in those places. So I didn't think it would even happen up here on a large scale. But I mean they're throwing some millions at it. So we'll see what happens. Because I mean, farmers up in Vermont too, it's like the dairy, like it was big in dairy up in Vermont. And all that is not the industry that it was 10, 20 years ago. And so these farms are looking for like a different option. And I don't know if there's enough space, but we'll see. They're throwing money at it. So
I know I'm working on getting this group of farmers that's in Maine. It's like 10 big farms, like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of acres. Like I'm just like, dudes, I just want some of your soil data, and I want some of your fiber. Like I still think even when it's grown for CBD and it gets like the thick bark around it, there's ways to, kind of separate them, like the bark from the actual fibers of the plant. And we just got to figure it out. That this is part of engineering things. Like, yeah, we could just accept things the way they are, or we can do what we've been doing for the past 100 years and engineer this at a ridiculously fast pace if we just have a team of people working on it.
mhm.
That's why I'm like constantly talking about it, getting ideas from people, like even people that have nothing, they don't know anything about hemp. They just like have ideas and like, what about this? I'm like,
I
So
was
it's
just talking to someone who's like he's like consulting setting up processing lines in these different states. So like I don't know how many people are doing that. Not many, I don't think. And I was talking to him about like when you're talking about herd for hemp building or animal bedding or all of these things, like where's the best herd coming from? Is it crops that were grown specifically for fiber, crops that were grown specifically for grain, or like where is it coming from? And he was saying that it's basically the more porous it is, like the lighter it is, and the more holes in it, the better. And then he's talking about when it's grown in terms of the inner woody core of it. So like the
yeah.
lighter it is, the better, basically. And so when you're growing for CBD or other cannabinoids, there's an element of the stalks or it branches out a lot, obviously, because you want more canopy space, and then those branches get really strong because they need to hold the weight of the flower. And then a big piece of it is, so like when you were talking about with the field that you have, like you chop it down and let it wet in the field, so it starts to like separate in the field already in terms of the fiber. When you're growing it for CBD, you're just like hanging the whole plant up, so then the whole plant dries, and so that natural separation doesn't occur as it would in the field. Like if you're growing for fiber, you chop it down, you let it wet in the field for 2 weeks. The microbiome of the field starts to break down like the natural glue that's holding all the fibers together. And when you don't do that retting process, I guess it like severely impacts the quality of anything that would come out of that like stalk, whether it's fiber or hurd. But at scale, I think we could get enough CBD for all the CBD products that are consumed in the country with plants that are growing like the way that you're going to grow for fiber or grain, in that limited amount of flower that's at the top, like that can be taken out. Even if it's grown for seed, there's still cannabinoids and terpenes in that flower. It's not going to be smokable flower. So maybe some people will still do that. Like there'll still be some really craft, like high quality smokable flower. But in terms of the CBD, like you can just harvest that from plant, like a tri-crop plant.
Yep.
So
that's exactly what I'm thinking, and then you can cut costs on CBD too, because that shit's way too expensive, and that helps all around too, because now it's basically a byproduct of what you're trying to do. I'm growing it for fiber and making my money off of that. I don't care necessarily about the cannabinoids, but if it's a byproduct of it and I'm making money, well then my cost automatically gets lower on everything. That's the dream. I mean, for me, because I make my products with all organic ingredients, that's what's like more expensive for me. I'm getting my CBD costs to a manageable level, but everything else is still, for a gallon of jojoba oil, it's like $120. It's it's insane.
Yeah, and going back to the Elon Musk thing too, it's like, all right, yeah, so we're gonna sequester all this carbon by just planting it, and that's it. Then never mind all of the other things that could potentially be utilized. It's like,
yeah, and it continuously sequesters carbon like the hempcrete does, the hemp wool, the hemp wood. It continues to sequester carbon afterwards. Like it's such a crazy swing. Concrete, they say like per meter square wall of concrete emits 300 kilograms per it's like kilograms per something of CO2 per year. So it's a huge carbon emitter, whereas hempcrete is negative 100 on that scale every year. And it's honestly insane when you think about it, because then you could build whole houses with, hempcrete, the hemp wool, and mostly hemp wood. They haven't figured out how to make the like structural beams and everything out of hemp yet, but all the rest of the wood is good to go. And I already know people building, hemp houses with their material and whatnot. So I'm really trying to get on board with them heavily, because I believe in that, to end the deforestation, which is also part of our project. If we can cut chunks into deforestation and, buy up land that was supposed to be cut down for timber and just leave the trees, and maybe cut, like if there's 10% of the land, cut down 20%, or cut down another 10%, so we can show this is what happens to the carbon sequestering when you cut down the plants, and then use that land to grow hemp on it, and then be like this. So the combination of keeping, say there's 1,000 acres and there was 100 of it was already bare from being cut down, and then another 100 was going to get cut down. So we cut down that 100 and kept the rest forever. It would be nuts, dude. Like we have 800 acres of carbon sequestering a tree and 200 acres with hemp. Like it just becomes this giant carbon sink at that point, and everything around it becomes symbiotic to the plants that are around it with the mycorrhizal fungi. And it's, I don't know. I don't know if I'm just being crazy in my head or not, but the way I'm envisioning it, by saving by not deforesting, it's gonna like increase our carbon capturing dramatically.
Yeah. It's weird, like when you get deep into it and you learn about all these other things, that it's not already happening. In that, like, it was happening before, and it was like intentionally stopped. It's
By a lumber tycoon,
yeah,
William Hearst Randall, or William Randall Hearst. I can't remember which
yeah,
order.
Randolph Hearst. Yeah, he was a part of it. He was definitely a big part of it, and I mean, he owned like the media. He was like a media mogul at the time too. So he started the whole like yellow journalism and reefer madness shit, and he was buddies with fucking Anslinger and the Rockefellers and Andrew Mellon, like all those guys. It's weird when you think about, like, all right, so weed was made illegal because of the industrial applications, but that's obviously not how it was presented. And then you go and look at like alcohol prohibition. So it's like, do you think, I don't want to go like full conspiracy theorist, but like, this isn't even I wouldn't even say this is a conspiracy. It's like, why do you think alcohol was made illegal? Like, it wasn't because, I mean, there was an element of like mothers against drunk, whatever. And like, there was a lot of abuse at the time. It's like, all right, that's fine. That still happens now.
Yeah.
Right before alcohol prohibition, Henry Ford is like, hey, alcohol is the way that we're going to power this country. Like, all the engines are going to be run off alcohol. Like, Henry Ford came out and said that. And then a handful of years later, alcohol is all of a sudden illegal because it's like the devil's liquid, and you know, it's ruining the country.
Mm.
And it's like, well, no, it was because all like they had just tapped like the first oil reserves in the North America, like a couple, like 10, 20 years earlier. And so that infrastructure was kind of getting built, and they're like, oh, we could do this and power everything from oil that we just found. And we know the people who found it, like we're all buddies. Or we could do this in a natural way, but that we're not set up to make billions of dollars from. It's just weird. And it's like, fine. I don't know. It's good to see that it's kind of coming around now, but there's like
leaps and hurdles to go through. Like, think about like what I'm trying to do going into Virginia. Do you know how many lumber mills there are in Virginia and North Carolina and that whole area? Like, I almost put a target on my back. Like, how many of these lumber mills are owned by like not so good people that would kill somebody like me? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, it's like the same shit that happened. Like, they want to stay doing what they're doing because that's how they make their money. And any competition, like, they're gonna do their best to eliminate it. This is why like lobbying should be illegal. Like, lobbying should not even be a thing that's allowed, because it's like, oh, whoever gives you the most money, that's who's gonna get what they want. It's like kind of a fucking backwards system.
Yeah. Yeah, money. That's why I always tell people, you vote more with your dollar than you vote with anything. You know, like, your vote is it counts, sort of, but like, voting with your dollar, if you don't support shitty companies, they can't survive. It's pretty much that fucking simple.
Yeah. Yep.
Like, people complain about McDonald's and what it does for America and the health, but then so many people I know eat McDonald's. I'm like, bruh, like, you can't complain with a Big Mac in your hand. That's not how this works.
Yeah, it's weird. I feel like there's I don't want to say like an awakening, and maybe this is just like I'm in my little echo chamber, but it seems like people are becoming more aware of these types of things. And honestly, like, another thing is like psychedelic research is getting like received way better, and like government, like different politicians are like, hey, we should look into this. Like Utah, politicians in Utah are like, hey, we should have this famous scientific institute in Utah. They should just look at the data, and whatever they think of that data, we should make decisions based on that. So like, to see a conservative state like Utah kind of coming around on psilocybin and these different things, like willing to look into it is definitely good. And so it's like, they're going to look into it. They're going to find what the current research shows, and that it's beneficial for all these different ailments. And then it's only a matter of time before like I don't know if you look at the list of Schedule 1 substances, so like cannabis is right now is a Schedule 1 substance. No medicinal benefit and high rate of addiction. That's what puts something in Schedule 1 substance. 90% of those substances in 10 years, I don't think are going to be on Schedule 1. There's going to be like a very small list because it's psilocybin, it's MDMA, cannabis is on there. Like those all have medicinal benefits to them, and they don't have a high rate of addiction. It's like I don't know where that came from, but
Well, for some people, psychedelics definitely have addictive qualities because it's like it unlocks this thing in your brain, and that's what becomes addictive. Like a lot of people that I know that just like fall into holes. I don't actually I don't really know what causes it, but I know I know quite a few people that have like fallen into just holes. They don't seem like the same people after how much they've hallucinated.
oh, well, that's a different thing. Yeah, I mean, doing a bunch of LSD, these things are not safe now because like if you get LSD, you don't know where that came from. Like that was made in a lab somewhere. Like you don't know what the dose is. You have
Yep.
zero idea how strong it is, and you don't even know what's in it. So, yeah, I mean, stuff like that. That's
I like
I
mushrooms.
know what you're saying there. Yeah, I mean, mushrooms is way better because it's like, hey, this is a mushroom. I
Yep.
don't know the psilocin or psilocybin content of it. I don't know exactly how strong it is, but like based, you can go based on your prior experience and you start low. It's like, but you know it's mushrooms.
You know, that's really easy to do too. Like mushrooms, psilocin is water soluble. So you can literally like boil mushrooms, filter out the mushrooms, and then boil down the water, and you're left with psilocin crystals. You just have to
Okay.
boil it down at like the perfect temperature to not burn off the psilocin crystals. And then when you do that, if if a lab or when a lab or school eventually opens up that can test how much psilocin that is, you have the pure extract. Now you can literally dose a pill or something like that perfectly with this is 20 milligrams of psilocin.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how this becomes medicine. And this is why I think they've really started to legalize it, because if you really look at where they're legalizing it, where did they legalize it or decriminalize it? In Massachusetts, Cambridge. What's in Cambridge? All the fucking schools.
Yeah.
So they're gonna research this, figure out what it does to our bodies so they can get ahead of us because they have way more advanced equipment than any of us. We're going off feelings and like, they're using this scientific equipment that is reading what it does to your brain and exactly. And they're gonna figure it out, and then they're gonna bastardize it the same way they did with cannabis by releasing um what is the fucking product that they released, the farmer product that's like CBD isolate and a couple food dyes and like sugar is it's like all bad.
Like a FDA approved drug.
Yep.
I know Epidiolex is one of them.
Trash.
Basically, just it's a CBD tincture, and it's like $30,000 a year. It's
Well, that's the one with isolate, and it's isolate's pretty much useless. Like you need the other cannabinoids and terpenes and everything to really make it work. When you just jam yourself full of CBD isolate, you're overwhelming your receptors, and at that point, for people like me, I get a migraine from too much isolate. It doesn't help my pain. But when I increase my full spectrum, like if I'm having a bad pain day, I'll take, instead of taking 100 milligrams of CBD, I'll take 400 milligrams, and I feel the difference because it's not just overwhelming and jamming my receptors. The terpenes are helping guide it to where it needs to go, and it's all really important to have that synergy and that what do they call it? Not the orchestration effect. The
the entourage effect.
yeah. I don't know why I want to say orc. It is like an orchestra though. Like
Yeah, you can call it whatever you want.
fuck the entourage effect. It's the orchestration effect now.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, there's a lot of research going on, like at Johns Hopkins and like Roland Griffiths is doing a lot of stuff. Like that stuff is undeniable, and these people are open to it. And it's kind of the same thing. It was like banned for 40 years, like, and now it's starting to come back. So it's cool to be living in a time where we're going from like seeing the prohibition to like the slow transition into more open-mindedness about natural substances as medicine, because it's like that's where like 80% of medicines come from. Either way, it's like from plants and natural stuff. So
that's essentially what happened with the illegalization of cannabis is we went from plant-based products and medicines to petroleum-based products and medicines. Like that's essentially what happened is they needed to get rid of their waste that they were going to get from all the oil products that they were going to use, and that's how plastic is born, and that's how like half the shit is born. It's really disgusting. And now that we know, it's like everybody knows better at this point, but I know so many people that just don't think about it. Like I have friends that still just throw plastic bottles out their window. I'm looking at them like, bruh, do you not know?
The building I live in right now doesn't have plastic recycling. So I like keep it myself, and then I go home to my mom's house like once a week and I go recycle it there. It's like when I moved in, he was like, oh, one of the concierge was like, paper recycling is over here. And I was like, oh, what about plastic recycling? He's like, oh, Worcester doesn't recycle plastics. I'm like, I just moved from somewhere else in Worcester. They recycle plastics. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he's like, oh, they do. And I was like, yeah. He's like, oh yeah, we don't do that here. I'm like, oh, and like, no, it's not a thing that really anyone else even thinks about. It's not. I mean, I shouldn't say that because people obviously care about it and think about it, but no, it's not like 100% of people who, because if they did, they would demand some new system and we would recycle things better. But yeah, I mean, like the same time around, like plastic was invented, nylon was invented.
Yep.
So it's like petroleum-based fabrics and polyester. Like you go into any store now, it's like 90% of the stuff is 100% polyester. It's like, yeah, it's soft. That's fine. But like every time you wash it, it's putting microplastics into your local water source.
Yep.
So it's like no one thinks about that type of stuff. And that's kind of one aspect of what I'm trying to do. And I'm trying to balance, like, I'm trying to figure out how to put this information out through like my personal channels or through the company's channels. Because it's like, I don't know if people don't know, or there's not a lot of conversation around it. And these, like, even with like a big thing now is like recycled plastic bottles, like making fabric out of recycled plastic bottles. It's like, no, we shouldn't be making clothes out of plastic. Like, I love that you recycled the plastic. That's great. But turn it into like furniture or something else. We shouldn't be wearing plastic, because every time you wash it, it's releasing microplastics into your local water source. It's like, and these things probably aren't getting filtered correctly, because then it starts getting into like PFAs and all that nonsense.
That's another thing I've been working on. I mean, it's kind of at a pause right now, but we're trying to grow on a landfill for the PFAS. That's really what we're going. That's really what like got me started down this carbon journey, was like looking at what it does for PFAS. And then my friend introduced me. I messaged her. I'm like, what do you know about what it does for PFAS? She's like, I have no fucking clue what that is. And then I told her, and I was like, I was looking at this one study and da-da-da-da. She's like, have you looked at what it does for carbon? I'm like, no, what do you mean? And then she sent me Kiss the Ground, and then I watched Kiss the Ground, and then I was just like, it wasn't a rabbit hole. It was like a fucking Elon tunnel, you know? Like it was.
Yeah. That was a really good documentary. But I saw you made a comment about it. Like, I don't know if this was in one of your other podcasts or what, but they didn't talk about hemp.
They didn't talk about hemp, not even once.
It's like
the whole movie. I was like, oh my God, here it comes. Here it comes. They didn't talk about hemp.
Yeah. You know what's it's interesting. I'm doing these videos now, like the weekly news videos, because I'm seeing stuff that I probably wouldn't have normally seen. There's an old out of commission Air Force base up in the northeast tip of Maine, like basically Canada. It was Loring Air Force Base. It was shut down in like 2009. Polluted the shit out of the land, like probably oil spills, all this stuff. There was an Air Force base, and just whatever they did, they polluted the shit out of the land. So the Air Force base gets shut down, and they give it back to the native tribe that originally owned the land. They do all these tests, and the Air Force said, like, yeah, we cleaned it up before we handed it over, but it was still very, very polluted with like PFAs, PFOs in the water supply, in the meat, in the deer meat that they would get from that region, like in the milk from the cows in that region. And they're calling them like forever chemicals. Like you can't, no one knows a way to get rid of them. So this last year, the native tribe, there was like the Micmac Nation, partnered with this like scientific group, and they planted a small test plot of hemp, and they got the results back, and it pulled a considerable percentage of those PFAs out of the soil. And at this point, so next year they're going to do a bigger plot of it, and in the meantime, they're trying to figure out like where those toxins went. Like, did the hemp break them down into like not dangerous organic compounds?
They're like back to their original form as like fossil fuels.
But yeah, so they're trying to figure that out. Like, what did the plant do with it? Because now, like, okay, do we have contaminated hemp plant material, or is this now like safe material to be used for fiber or all those things? So
I have a lab that will actually test that. Bless you, the plant material for PFAS.
interesting. Yeah, it's like a scientific group that's doing it. So I'm sure they're like working with a lab like that. But it's very interesting to see because it's like there's so many Superfund sites that are just like decommissioned, and it's just like, oh, we just don't go over there.
We just don't talk about that.
Yeah. It's like, and if we could actually clean it up, I mean, Chernobyl, like they planted hemp at Chernobyl and it pulled a bunch of heavy metals and toxins out of the soil. Like,
well, not only will the hemp pull the PFAS out of the soil, but if you have contaminated groundwater, you can actually take and run the groundwater through the hemp proteins with carbon and one other, I think it's like a silica, and it filters out over 98% of the PFAS out of it in like a 15-minute contact time.
in what way? Like, how is the hemp used in that?
So they kind of used it at a smaller scale. It was like a big beaker, and they had the filter mediums in there. So they had like the silica and then the carbon and then the hemp in there. And they compared it to like they did one with just the carbon and silica, and then one with the hemp, and the one with the hemp took out 98% of the contaminants.
Was it like hemp flour or?
Hemp protein. So the way they describe hemp protein is they take the whole entire plant and they pulverize it essentially. Like they grind
Okay.
powder. So it's like all the seeds, the stems, the leaves, the buds, like everything in it. So it's these are questions I've had is, well, where does it go? Like, is it just stuck in the hemp stock, or is it gone non-detectable in my hemp stock? And now I also have a product. Like I
Yeah.
also have hemp herbs, because if that's the fucking case, why aren't we doing this everywhere? I'll do it.
Yeah.
Like, let me just grow on your dump. I'll fucking like,
Yeah. I mean, even around us, like in Massachusetts, there's different sites that are polluted that
Yep.
can potentially be completely remediated from planting something. It's like, it sounds crazy, but it also sounds crazy like when you're in it that it's not being tested on a bigger scale.
Yeah, dude. Like that's the crazy part. There's actually a decent amount of acreage in Dighton because I live in Taunton, the town over, and it's been sitting on the market forever because it's contaminated. And now that I'm thinking about that out loud, why isn't that the land I'm buying?
I mean, there should be like a grant to do some tests to clean that up. Like,
Right.
they should be welcoming people who are willing to remediate it.
This is why I'm just really trying to push all the hemp textiles and everything too, because the more we get like some kind of industry behind this that's actually a money making thing, it can push it forward. That's the problem, is everybody asks where's the money coming from, and I'm like, well, I have this idea that is going to eventually make money. I don't know. They're like, well, where's the money coming from?
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, I want to make this carbon credit program for farmers, and well, where's the money? Like, it's like, well, we got to build it, motherfucker. You got to give me some money so we can make some money. Like, this is how this investing works. I don't know if you knew that. Like,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we started the clothing company. It's like, I don't have a background in fashion. Like, I don't like, but the goal was like, all right, what can we do in the hemp industry to contribute and like help create positive change by educating people about it. So at like the most fundamental level, the goal is to educate people and create demand from consumers for hemp textiles so that like that goes upstream. So if there's consumer demand for something, then it's going to kind of go upstream and there'll be motivation for farmers to grow it and for people to invest millions of dollars into the processing. So it's like that was kind of one of the main goals of what we're doing, and in doing things like this and talking about it is part of it. Like the more people talk about it, the more someone who has never heard of something like this before will be like, oh shit. And then they'll use their life experience and potentially do something else with it. And just kind of, then it's a network effect of the more people that are involved with it, doing stuff with it every day. Eventually we'll be able to like be old and sitting back and be like, remember when this wasn't so common? Like when we didn't clean up the polluted land that was all over the country with hemp. Like, so
I remember when we just ignored it and pretended it wasn't a problem because we couldn't make money off it. Remember those times? That was fun times. Dude, it's already been an hour and 40 minutes. This always happens in every show. Like I just start talking and I don't look at that little timer because it's so freaking small. And then I finally look up and it's like an hour and a half or 2 hours. There's been times I've looked up and it's like 3 hours. I'm like, fucking hell. It definitely happens far too much. I really want to have like an in-person pod with you. Like I'm really thinking about doing some kind of like hemp roundtable thing. And because I have a few other friends that are really, really smart about this. We're all like involved in NFTs, we're all involved in hemp, and it's all just really synergistic. So I definitely want to try to make that happen in the future.
I'd be down for sure.
Yeah. And I figured we were gonna nerd out about hemp. Like I said, I was excited about this show for that reason, because just talking about it more gets me thinking more, like, so I leave this, sleep on it, I wake up in the morning, I'm like, light bulb, all right. And that's just always how it works when I get to talk about it. And unfortunately, there's like a handful of people in my life that I could talk to about this at length. I actually didn't even know you knew so much about this topic when you're talking to me about PFAs and PFOs. I was like,
Yeah, no, it's interesting too. Like from when I just started putting out more content about like trying to educate people, I've connected with people that are completely different parts of the country that were just like, hey, where they're also doing something like stuff like this or working with the plant. And so I've met a lot more people just from talking about it. And like I had known about Urban Acres, like I had been in the mall and seen your brand and like had known that you were doing stuff locally in the hemp industry. But in terms of like outside of your local community, it's the power of the internet really is like kind of opening this stuff up. So I'm down to do this whenever and get involved with anything in any capacity to kind of help what you're doing and just keep kind of spreading information.
dude, that's mind-blowing. So I really met you at the mall? So
I don't know if I met you because the times that I have gone there, I don't think I ever met you there, but like you had some people working the booth
yeah.
and I had seen that you were a local CBD brand. And so then kind of like found you on social media and stuff. And then with kind of how I saw you kind of getting into the V Friends community and all that stuff. And then started doing this podcast and I kind of started paying more attention to what you were doing as I started to try to kind of follow in a similar path with putting more content out. So yeah, I'm glad we were able to connect and do this. I've had a very solid time doing this, having this conversation. I'm sure it will not be the last one we have. If there's going to be like a local meetup or something, like you're trying to do a V Friends thing locally, I'm down to do that as well.
I've been trying to plan a local V Friends meetup for a while. I've just been every month. It's just like fucking something. It's just something. And like this month and last month, it's taxes. Like by the end of this month, I'll be done with taxes and just be like, oh my God, I need like the biggest blunt of my life. Like 3 of them back to back to back.
I mean, V Friends is right around the corner either way too. So it's like 3 months we'll all be in Minneapolis.
Yeah, by the time I'm in May, dude, like it'll be busier at my full-time job, so I'll be making more money. We'll be farming again. So like for me, when I get to go outside and farm for 8 to 10 hours a day sometimes. Like last season it was more like 4 to 8 hour days. It wasn't as bad. But when I get to do that, it's exhausting, but like I'm always in a better mood because the amount of sun that I get, like I'm probably getting enough vitamin D for like a year in one day. Like no, I'm just kidding, but it's a lot, especially when I get out there a lot. I like to farm in the spring, especially because like I kind of don't cover up, like because I'm not trying to stay cool. Like I'll just farm barefoot, no shirt on, like a fucking hippie, and yeah.
That's
So
awesome. I'll have to come check it out when you get the field going this year. Definitely want to come
sure.
check it out.
Yeah, I'll probably be able to start having people there by June. I want to let them get big, so when people walk through, they're like a waist high fucking forest of hemp plants,
Mm.
and then that's when this project gets interesting because I've already sold out of the rares, right? And like 20% or more, like 25% of the supply of cores is gone, and I haven't had success in to my people that know me, like just met me. They've never seen me have a successful crop in hemp. So as soon as they see that everything I've been saying, because I've kind of been saying this, like, hey guys, I'm planting really late. I might have complete crop failure again, but I'm going for it because this is part of building the soil. So like I've been just kind of talking about it all the way through. And when it happens, the way that I'm talking about, people are gonna be like, whoa, and then sold out. That's like the way I'm envisioning it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I wish you all the success, man. Because I've never been in or around an industrial hemp field ever. Like I've been around hemp for CBD and stuff like that, in the adult use market, but I've never been at a field that is just densely packed of hemp plants. And I'm like, really looking forward to the day when that happens. I know it's most likely going to be this year, just with like how much more I'm doing in the industry and like networking. And if it could be in Westport, dude, that would be awesome.
Yeah, yeah, I know a few hemp farms you could walk through like that in Connecticut too, so we could do like a field trip or some shit like
Nice.
that.
That are growing for like fiber or grain and not just like cannabinoid production.
Both.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm really like MDAR says I'm the only person growing for fibers and grain in Massachusetts.
Yeah. I've like done research into it before, and that's why there's no one around here doing it. So it's like, and I've never been anywhere like in Colorado or California where there are fields, in Montana and different places like bigger agricultural states. So if you're the first one to do it in Mass, that'd be awesome.
That would be, man. I can't wait. I hope I am. Just for like, I was the first hemp NFT as far as I know, like in the world, and
Damn.
a
That's
cannabis
awesome.
NFT tried to steal this. They're actually not the first. They said that they were the first cannabis NFT to offer real life discounts on cannabis based products.
Yeah,
Not true.
I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Did that before them, so not true.
Yeah.
It's cool that other people are doing that, but they should do their research before they make statements like that. Like I know for a fact there was no other hemp NFTs. There was cannabis,
Yeah.
ones, no hemp ones. So it's exciting in that sense, and I really hope that we talked about funding being hard for cannabis based businesses. Hopefully NFTs can kind of be a little gateway into getting some funding because I do believe that eventually this project is gonna attract some fucking whales, and when it does, it might be too late for them. They might be buying from you guys. That's my hope. Like I'm hoping I'm like the whales catch on after version 2 sells out, and like, wait a second, like yeah, the only way into this company, they own all the shares of the company. Like everything that's given out is within their shares, so you got to buy those NFTs.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Like I don't want to have a publicly traded company. I want to have like a blockchain traded company. That's kind of like the way I envision it.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and just the things that come along with that in terms of kind of the utility that you can provide to people in perpetuity, just like randomly drop something to people. and voting mechanisms that people can have, and it's definitely going to disrupt a lot of industries, and funding for cannabis is a huge piece of that. So I know there's starting to be like more conversation around that. I'm starting to see it more in the media. Like MJ Biz is posting articles about like just starting to talk about it more, the intersection of like cannabis and crypto and Web3 in general. So it's going to disrupt everything. Cannabis is not going to be any different. So it'll be fun to watch from like the ground level.
Yeah, dude, we really are on the ground level. That's like somebody put up a picture about like telephones and how like they're plugging wires in when the first telephone, like that's where we are right now on the internet. You know, like, compared to where the internet is now, like it's really it's humbling, honestly, and we're all gonna fuck up a bunch. I already have, and I've already made a bunch of mistakes. Like I could have minted a Bored Ape. I could have minted a World of Women. There's another one, Satoshi Girls, that I could have minted for like 0.01 that's already 0.8. I'm like, fuck my life, dude. Like, why am I doing these things? Like, just commit, just do it, just spend the $200 and they're gonna flip. And it's eventually I'm staying humble after.
There's more opportunities. Like every day there's more stuff happening. So from what I've like gathered from it, as long as you stay kind of like up to date on what's going on, eventually it'll kind of work out. And even if it's just like the information that's something you learn that you can then implement into your own program, into your own project. Like, I don't know, there's it's just so early with all that stuff. It's like just being around it and learning about it, and like VCon and just the amount of information that like we're going to be able to soak up from the speakers and networking there. It's going to be pretty crazy.
When are you flying out for VCon?
Landing the Thursday night.
Oh,
when does it? I think so.
Yeah, it's Thursday night is like the first day that he told everybody flying, and I flew in the day before. I was like, fuck that. I want a night to like settle in and maybe have a night of fun. Like, because I feel like all the nights are going to be a lot of like business networking, and it'll be fun, but it's still going to be a lot of work. And I want one night to just hang with my peeps and like do nothing.
Yeah.
Although we'll probably still talk about all that stuff. I'm lying to myself because I'm actually talking about doing a hemp panel the day I land at a different event. So
I'm trying to do something with a buddy I have in Minnesota as well. So he's like in the hemp community in Minneapolis. And I know I kind of mentioned it to you in like Twitter, but we haven't planned anything yet. But he does events with his group, the cannabis group that he has in Minnesota, that they have done events in the past. So we might try to do something, maybe do a panel where we have some people like from the local market to talk about the intersection of cannabis and Web3. So we might do something like that Friday. And I saw V Friends, or like the community, is like, if you submit your event to them, they're going to like consolidate it all into a list to like show people offsite, like unofficial events. So I might do something.
I'm about to just set up a tent and a table and have a panel out front of VCon. Be like, fuck, you won't let us in? This is what people do. This is what small musicians do, and you won't let them perform. They set up a stage and fucking perform outside.
Yeah. You know what's crazy is like months ago, I went onto the site and it was like, oh, if you're interested in doing any sort of like brand collaboration or anything like that, here's the email to use. And so I wanted to just like have a conversation to see what options I might have to like promote yesterday. Yep. In the emails that they had on the website, I got returned to sender because it was like what?
You got a mailer, Damon?
Yeah, where it came back and it was like, whoa, how is this not set up the right way? Like, and I'm sure they fixed it now, so I got to try that again. But yeah, like the emails on the website were wrong. So I was like, oh shit.
Either that or they stopped taking emails on that, then they just shut it down.
I'm sure they got a ton of interest. Yeah. I haven't looked at it besides that
program for sure. Like that's one of my main goals for this too, is to get us into the PLP program eventually.
Okay. Is that still going? Like I haven't seen much I
haven't seen the project in a while, but I know he hasn't abandoned it at all. So he's probably just so heads down on V2 that that's his main focus. And then once V2 comes out, he'll work on more brand collaborations to get, more movement on V1 book games, and then with V2. It's gonna be a crazy time, man. I'm very excited. I got 2 book games. I got a VFriend version 1 Go. So, like, and now they added the Go badges to the fucking picture of the NFT, which I feel
Oh,
like they
nice.
did so long ago, but it's a great update because now people can actually look at it and be like, "Oh, that's a Gary owned original," instead of having to click in it and click the description. Most bots don't do that. So now bots can be programmed to look for the little Go symbol,
Oh, yeah.
and boom. I'm already getting better offers. I laugh at them. I literally every day they come in, I'm like,
How much higher are the offers for yours than like a standard that isn't a Go?
so far like 20 to 40% depending on it. It's
Oh, wow.
usually I have a core, and because it's a Go, I get the same offers as the specs get.
Oh,
Sometimes
wow.
even a little more. So it's wildly crazy. Like before Christie's, I was getting 20 ETH offers. So
That was crazy that time right before Christie.
dude, that was a nut time, and I feel like that's only like a tiny little peak. Like that's not even all the way up, and I do think, it'll be worth at least a few hundred ETH. Like my Go, I feel like I could sell for 500 ETH or maybe 555, and then I'll be happy. But
I'm interested to see like after the end of these 3 years when the utility is for VCon is dried up and you VCon 3 years are over, like what the value of them is going to be. Cause he's obviously going to keep working on it forever, but it's like, what's the market going to dictate that these are worth after 3 years of VCon?
yeah, well, I think that's why he's releasing NFTs with VCon, because then that becomes something that's worth something too.
Yeah.
Like, here's what I'm envisioning. I don't think all 4 years are going to be in the States, or all 3 years. He's already talked about Toronto. So for people like me, I'm probably not going to go to Toronto. Now I get an NFT. I'm able to sell my ticket for $10,000-$15,000, and I make $10,000-$15,000 that year, and then say it's in fucking the UK on the 3rd year. I do the same fucking thing. I made $30,000 just for holding the token. It's literally what I think is about to happen.
That's
And
another thing I'm excited to see is like what the value of those tickets become for people who can't go, and like what the market dictates for those too. Like it's going to be a few ETH for sure.
dude, I've already heard like 8-10 ETH offers for those tickets. Like it's bananas, dude. Like basically the same thing, same price as a VFriend. Like people are trying to fucking pay to get into this.
Wow.
Yeah, like it's gonna be in the vicinity, I would say, of 10 to 15, maybe 20,000 to rent out and lease out these tokens.
That's wild.
It's fucking wild. The amount of money that's about to be exchanged is ridiculous, dude, and I hope I can get in on some of it.
Yeah, I mean, if just like if he does it anywhere else, yeah. I mean, one of the NFTs is like something about Toronto and St. Louis or something like.
Yep. That's
So
I think that might be next. Maybe Toronto and St. Louis are like the next two, or like I don't know. He's always throwing little Easter eggs out there. He loves that comic book shit.
yeah.
But hell yeah, I gotta run. I have a heart out. I gotta work on some stuff, and it's just been fucking nonstop lately. But like I said, I want to get this roundtable going. So let's definitely stay in touch. And when you move to Dartmouth, let me know too, because then we could definitely link up and talk more. And hopefully in the next couple of years, I'm just one of your suppliers for hemp fiber.
That'd be incredible. Yeah, if we could be growing it in mass and end up processing it in mass, and the more that we can do regionally is kind of the goal. So yeah, I appreciate you having me on and having this conversation, and definitely won't be the last one. So I look forward to eventually linking up in real life soon as well.
Fuck yeah. Well, as always, first of all, next week I have, let's see, I booked so far in advance, I don't even remember who my guests are anymore. I just have to look at my list. And let's see. So next week I have Brigham Nielsen. It's another VFam. I'm excited to talk to him too. So Tune in for that next Thursday, 8:30. If you're watching, make sure you subscribe. It's only $10 a month. It goes to great cause, like fixing my camera so I can stop looking like I'm on a potato. I actually got to call the camera repair place tomorrow. It's been way too long. They're spending like $400 to fix that shit. But as you can see, the green screen is coming, and there's improvements happening in front of your face, even if you don't see it.
Nice.
So as always, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Good vibes to you.